The state machine is immensely powerful in controlling different animations, arranging and maintaining multiple clips on a character. We can use state machines to transition between all the different animations and set conditions on them in responding to gameplay or player input. Let's create a new animator controller for the dog to look at how to create state machines and the various states in them. In the Assets Animations folder, right-click to create a new animator controller and choose Create and Animator Controller. Name this new animator controller Dog. To enter the animator window, either double-click on an animator controller or choose Window and Animator from the top menu. The default state machine has an AnyState and Entry. Entry is the condition when this character is spawned in the scene, and any state can be transitioned to from any other state. Again, we might use the AnyState for a death animation. At any point, a character might meet a death condition and play a death animation. Now we'll create a new empty state in our animator window. Right-click and choose Create State and Empty. This creates a new state, which is marked as the default state. Select the new state by clicking on it, and we'll name this new state Idle. This new state is a placeholder for animation. There's no motion on it. There's nothing linked in this motion section. We can also create states by dragging animation clips into the animator window. Browse into the Models, Characters folder and open up the dog model by clicking on the arrow to the right. There's two animations in here we segmented out previously, Idle and Walk. We already have an idle state, so we need to map the motion to it. Take the idle and drag it onto that motion slot, and now the idle is associated as the default state for the dog. Another way to create a new state is to take an animation from the project window and drag it into that animator window. Select the walk animation and drag it in. This creates a new state called Walk. Right now there are no transitions between these states. Idle is transitioned to from Entry. When that character starts, it will go to the idle, and it will cycle that idle animation endlessly. To create a transition, right-click on a state and choose Make Transition, and then drag that arrow onto another state, in this case, Walk. Now what this says is, after the idle animation, based on exit time, transition to Walk, meaning after this animation completes 90% by default of its 215 frames, it will transition to the walk animation. This transition then is controlled by exit time. As this clip starts to end, it will transition to the next piece. If we look in our settings here on this transition, and again, select the transition itself in the animator window to see its settings in the inspector, we can see that the transition duration is 0.25, and this controls the length of that transition. In here, we have an exit time. At what point is that exit beginning? There's a fixed duration, where we've mapped it to an exact duration, and the offset is 0. This transition begins when we say it's going to begin, instead of being offset by a certain number of frames. In addition to exit time, we can also control transitions by conditions, and we can add in different parameters that are accessible via script to control how that character, and when, transitions the animations. Let's create one more transition here. Right-clicking on Walk and choosing Make Transition and dragging back to Idle. What this means, initially because they're set to exit time, is that this character will idle. After one idle completes, it will transition based on exit time to Walk, and then when the Walk animation completes, it will transition based on exit time back to Idle. And this cycle will continue until we break it using a parameter driven by a script.